Yes, I'm with Nick Cornu, and I've called him into the headquarters of the Dun television service because I saw him this morning. I saw his legs and feet. There he is at the Scrutiny hearing this morning, and I recognised his feet there. How many people, public people, were there, Nick?
Public, probably two, and the other two who you can see there, I think, are friends of those who were giving evidence.
Right, so, I mean, it was streamed, but as I haven't got the sound on there, but you can see it. Pretty appalling to watch, isn't it, on the streaming?
It's extremely difficult to hear and one has to be very dedicated and to listen right to the end. But there was some good stuff, nevertheless.
It was about mental health.
It was indeed, and it was quite revealing, and those who spoke were extremely critical of a system that is under-resourced and not properly.
Now these were all professional clinicians, weren't they? This is what they were. They were psychiatrists, doctors, or whatever.
There was
the witnesses.
Yeah, there was one psychiatrist. I think the others are functionaries within the system.
Right.
And, someone who'd been there in Jersey 21 years, another 10 years, come from Australia, so they're familiar with what's the system. They are the system, I think.
So they knew what was good or what was bad? What was it, mostly good or mostly bad?
They were highly critical. I think it's the lack of resources and it's the circumstances of Jersey trying to recruit capable individuals who don't realise the good sides of living in Jersey, because there are, the lifestyle, but on the books, if you just simply do the mathematics, it's not attractive to come to Jersey. It's simply too expensive, and that means the pool of resources for them is limited. They're constantly trying to recruit and they find it difficult.
Which can't be good for the patients, can it?
It cannot, and what they talked about was the upturn in referrals to them, significant.
Really?
So mental health is deteriorating in the island.
Did they give any reasons why that was increasing?
There's no one causal fact, although one of the members was trying to press for that, but there clearly isn't. There's a number of factors, and there isn't, but it's a lot to do with the societal pressures, as one of the clinicians actually said. It was the medicalisation of social issues, and I think would underline that here is a government that is ignoring social problems.
Of course, rather late in the day they've realised, or they seem to have realised, that the hospital needs to include a mental health facility. Did they refer to that need?
No, that didn't come up. There was reference to Orchard House, where there are mental health facilities, and they made a joke that it's so bad is it that even the rats have left.
Really? Yeah. Did they say whether Orchard House was adequate for what they had to do?
Well, there was someone who'd come about 9 years ago and who'd been told on his first day that it was inadequate, and so it remains 9 years later, and that's pretty typical of the kind of resources that they, particularly in terms of the accommodation. The other location was La Chasse, and it's a place where they actually have to speak in hushed tones because the walls are so thin that other people would overhear them.
Of course, Orchard House, as I know of it, it's the same as the main building. It's all boarded up. All the windows have got plywood over them. So the actual psychiatric part is presumably where? Do we know?
That I don't know. I haven't been for a very long time.
Mm-hmm. So...
But presumably it's still going, otherwise they wouldn't have referred
Well, there was a unit at the back. They built a fairly newish unit, I think, about 10 years ago, but it was very limited accommodation. I don't know, did they refer to the actual numbers of beds they had?
No, there was no reference to that.
So these, I think there are 5 or 6 of them today, clinicians.
Yes, indeed.
Quite a gang of them. Yeah. So they had a wide range of things to say. What other things did they talk about? The money, resources, is that fairly high level?
One or two were a little more honest that what we're actually dealing with are the problems of society, the issues that Jersey won't address, And it was noticeable that the panel, which is conservative with a small c, was having difficulties struggling with those obvious and rather embarrassing facts. So it's not just about the service itself and what resources it's got, it's what's actually generating the problem. And that's a societal problem about inequalities in Jersey society. None of that did the panel really wish to listen to. But it was being brought out by some of the coalitions who were referring to it.
What sort of housing, was that an issue?
Housing, of course, yes, absolutely. High cost of living.
Work pressures, was that kind of... Because we hear a lot about finance industry, pressures on people at work, all sorts of rather bad work practices. Was that referred to?
The main concern was with children, young adults, and the way they fitted into a modern society, the pressures on them, particularly a society that, since 2008, and once was mentioned, of course, the financial crash, the difficulty that youth has in inserting itself into decent jobs, and those are obviously difficult to find, and that obviously creates a lot of mental health problems. Those at school who've got peer pressure and to conform as to what's expected of them and how to deal with these issues.
I made a comment on that because I could only see the streaming, but I couldn't. My sound equipment isn't very good at the best of times, but it was particularly bad today. I couldn't follow the streaming version of it today. But it did look a rather sloppy meeting. Did you have any thoughts on that? Whether it looked very professional? It all looked a bit... did you find it a bit amateur?
Well, the sound recording is abysmal, and that really does need to be addressed, and I don't think the witnesses were reminded that they should be speaking to the microphone as well as to their panel.
Of course, Deputy Haggerty did refer to that, but I don't think people realise that the microphones don't actually magnify their sound, their speaking in the room. Of course, it's only for the purposes of the recording. Well, if they don't sit close to the mics, it doesn't even get on the recording, so it does seem a very sloppy system in that regard.
I was able to hear all those who were speaking and what they were saying.
What room was it? Was it Blompy or...
Blompy, I think.
Right. So, the end of the day, how long did it go on for?
An hour and a half.
Hour and a half. Did they have more to say, or were they tired and ran out of questions?
No, on the whole they kept going. I mean, there was 5 of them, so they were able to fill the gaps.
What do you think of the panel? They're all new States members, aren't they?
They're shaping up, I would say. I think probably they came in and the system itself has forced them. They've had to rise to the occasion, and I think they're doing it in their conservative fashion.
But they're having to learn on the job, which
they are,
and that's, to me, it's rather noticeable that they, that doesn't. I mean, obviously they are okay. That's the reality, isn't it? They're newly elected. But it makes you wonder about the quality of scrutiny, doesn't it? Because obviously you want experienced politicians really on scrutiny. I mean, the system, when I was talking to somebody, they seem to think it's a sort of a training ground for people to become real politicians and in the chamber. Whereas it ought to be the other way around. You want real politicians who've got the knowledge, who ought to be on scrutiny. That's the way it ought to be.
I wonder how much use they make of the resources that they could call on. Experts from outside who can give them the necessary analysis of elsewhere, other systems, which they could be applying. Those are the kind of questions that should be honed and directed towards those who appear as witnesses. It should be, in a sense, the quality of the questioning is not high. It could be better.
Yes, I mean, obviously, if you've got clinicians there, you want another clinician who's got a country point of view, don't you?
Precisely, and they've got
on the panel.
They've got resources, and they could be calling in these kind of people to critique a structure. What
sort of background do you think the clinicians? Was there a Jersey clinician, a Jersey-born one? Were they all imports?
I think they're all imports. One had come from Australia, who'd been about 10 years. Another one had been 21 years, so dedicated. And that is something that did come out, and clearly they realised that jobs in the finance industry would be a lot more cushy, but they were dedicated to what it was they were doing. That is something at least came out of it. And they came from other places. One was a Spaniard, and probably. So what question? What keeps them here?
Did they touch on suicide as a subject? Because I noticed that there was a coroner's meeting, what they call the Viscount's meeting, I think that day or the day before being held.
Yes, it was a constant theme, I would say.
Was it?
Yeah, it's there. Suicidality was a
Did they offer any
noun.
possibilities of what might be done, what needs to be done?
They didn't, but my conclusion would be resources.
Yeah.
And its government doesn't want to produce it.
I notice, from what I can see on here in the audience, there were no states members in the audience.
They never turn up, or very rarely from our experience. Why not? I don't know. It seems ridiculous, because this is an obvious way to become a lot better informed about the job it is you've got to perform. You're not going to tell me that you're so busy that... Well, I know, I've been to states member for the glorious 7 months, and I attended scrutiny meetings because it was a way of keeping informed.
Absolutely, you know what the others are up to.
Yeah, otherwise you're just stuck in the coffee room and chit-chatting.
I mean, my feeling after all these years of observing all these, a lot of states members don't take the job seriously.
Absolutely agreed. It's a sinecure. It's primary reason for doing is status. Big fish, small pond.
Yeah.
Particularly the constables who do not pull their weight, who are there, act as the conservative voting fodder for the establishment, really don't justify their position. There are 1 or 2 noble exceptions, but clearly the system is clearly deficient. But that's how they want to run it, and that's how it is, and that's what's wrong.
Okay, I think that'll do for now.
Right, pleasure.
Thanks a lot.